Welcome back, class. Today we are doing semester number 2, lesson number 6. Our aim today is how did citizens gain more political power during the Progressive Era? And before we get started on that, let's just brainstorm or recall what the Progressive Era was, right? Progressive Era was a time in which progress was being made. They were trying to improve society, move forward, make changes that were beneficial to everyone. All right. And our do now today, just kind of think about on your own, is if you could change one thing about New York State or in New York State, what would it be? So take a few minutes to think about that, and that's where we'll start today. Reform of state government, and we're going to look at New York State in particular, but in general, how were governments reformed? And think about when we talk about reform, change, right? Form, and then reform to form again. Some talking points to keep in mind. Why do you think it is important that people are involved in the government? Do you believe that people truly have any say in the government's decisions? And how can people bring about change in the laws and rules of America? So those are what we're really going to be focusing in on. You guys are also going to develop your own lesson questions to discuss, but those are three that I put out there for you guys. So the first thing we're going to look at is progressive reform. And when we talk about progressive reform, we're talking about power to the people. All right. Another progressive ideal was to give more power to the people in the politics of the United States. It basically being, looking at this, guys, what our whole country was made on was the idea that the people are in control. However, if we look at the 1800s, the mid 1800s, and even into the late 1800s, more of the control was in the hands of very few people. And I want you to think about people like Boss Tweed, who basically ran the city on his own. All right. There needed to be more power in the hands of the people. And a few ways in which we're going to see today they give more power to the people are through direct primaries, referendums, initiatives, and recall, which help increase participation in government among all citizens. And when we talk about the people who gain power in this, one group we want to focus on are the people we've been talking about the most recently, which are the immigrants. All right, the immigrants are going to gain much more power because of this. All right, so the first thing we're going to focus on is the direct primary. All right, before, and I'm going to use um, President Obama as an example. Before President Obama ran against John McCain in 2008, all right, he first had to run against Hillary Clinton. And the reason is Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama belong to the same party. They're both Democrats, all right? Before he ran against McCain, who was a Republican, he had to first gain his party's nomination. So that is called a primary, when you run against someone in the same party as you for the nomination. So Obama first had to run against Hillary. He defeated her in that election, and then he ran for the presidential election against McCain. All right. So basically, being said, the direct primary is when voters nominate candidates by direct popular vote in a primary election, state election before the general election, which happens in November. All right. So the next one we're going to talk about is the initiative. What is an initiative? And an initiative is something that you guys can do, you know, yourselves. By signing a petition, a small percentage of voters could force the state legislature to consider a proposed law. This happens, so pretty often where you see, if people go around and ask you to sign something, if there's enough signatures, then the state legislature, in our case up in Albany, has to look at this and see can we make a change to our system of laws to accommodate these people who are asking for a change. Now, there's no guarantee that anything's going to be changed, but when you get all those signatures, it means that something can possibly be done. The next one we're going to talk about is referendum. All right, a referendum is a proposed law um, that could be submitted to the people and voted on in an election. And you see that almost on every election. We just had one in New York State in November. I'm pretty sure it was called Prop 1. I'm not 100% sure, but really what this proposition had to do with was um, casinos and allowing casinos in New York State. off of Native American reservations, and we're talking full casinos here. And it was a vote of the people, and more people voted yes than no. And the reason more people voted yes is because it brings in more money for New York State to be spent on education and other needs the state may have. Referendum, simply put, is a vote by the people and a majority vote. So they put something to vote. If more people vote yes, then it becomes a law. A recall is something that happens very rarely but can happen. All right. When the people, all right, vote whether to remove an elected official from office before his term ends. And, I guess these PowerPoints are getting a little old because what I have here doesn't even, when I made this PowerPoint, the guy on the right, Gray Davis, was the governor of California. And he was doing such a terrible job that the people of California called for a recall, and they said he was no longer the governor. And who was elected in his place was Arnold Schwarzenegger. All right. It doesn't happen very often, but it can happen where the people of a state decide to make a recall, and basically it's, hey, we made a mistake when we voted this guy in. He's not doing what he said he was going to do, so now we're going to change it. All right. Our check for understanding today: initiative, referendum, recall, and direct primary are all intended to: A. Make the president more responsive to the wishes of Congress. B. Reduce the influence of the media on elections. C. Give political parties more control of the electoral process. Or D. Increase participation in government by the citizens. And I want you guys to think about that, and we'll talk about the answer in class. So over the next 2 days in class, we are going to, well, today you're going to be develop this, and then tomorrow we're going to present it. You and your partner, when I say partner, you can go up to groups of three, will write a referendum that you would like to see the people of New York vote on and pass to better our state in some way. All right. Remember, the key phrase there is better our state in some way. So be conscientious of how you are going to approach this. Remember, you want to have a clear vision of what your goal is for the referendum. All right. Your task, the first part of your task, is to state the goal of the referendum. Do not use a referendum that has already been used. Make sure you state your referendum in such a way that it can relate to many types of people, so that the most people will vote yes on it. The second part is to explain why this referendum will help the people of New York in some way. And the third part of the referendum is explain how this referendum will be applied in New York. So those are your 3 parts. If you do not address all 3 parts, you are not going to get full credit. So on this slide, all I'm doing, I'm showing you a teacher model to give you an idea of what could be something you look at. And this is a model based on one that California used about, I guess, 6 or 7 years ago, called Prop 19. All right. Prop 19 was for the legalization of marijuana for personal consumption. All right. The first task I asked, is answered right here. The goal of Proposition 19 was the legalization of marijuana for personal consumption. The second task was answered by supporters of Proposition 19 argued that it would help with California's budget shortfall, would cut off a source of funding to violent drug cartels, and would redirect law enforcement resources to more dangerous crimes, while opponents claimed it contains gaps and flaws that may have serious unintended consequences on public safety, workplace, and federal funding. However, even if the proposition had passed, the sale of cannabis would have remained illegal under federal law via the Controlled Substances Act. And number three, third task, possess up to 28.5 grams 1 ounce of cannabis for personal consumption. Use cannabis in non-public places such as residence, a public establishment licensed for on-site cannabis consumption, and to grow cannabis at a private residence in a space of 25 square feet for personal use. All right, so if we look at this proposition, this referendum, the goal is to allow legalization of marijuana for personal use only, not for sale. All right. And the idea of selling this, or I'm sorry, not selling this, of allowing this personal usage is that it would prevent, very petty crimes from happening where cops are busting you for having a very small amount of marijuana on you. It would also cut off a source of money that drug cartels, make money off the sale of marijuana. And it would allow law enforcement to really focus on more serious crimes. However, the federal government has banned the sale of cannabis, and I know what you guys are thinking. Colorado and Washington, they have, weed is legal. That's not 100% true. The federal government has banned the sale of weed. So if they ever decide to enforce the Controlled Substances Act, all right, Washington and Colorado are not within their legal right to be selling marijuana. And the third part, it's saying that you can only have a certain amount of cannabis or weed. It's not saying that you can, roll up with like 12 ounces. You can have 1 ounce, which is really not that much of a, it's not like you could be selling with 1 ounce. So it's just enough for personal consumption. So, I'm leaving you guys with the idea of the thought that you have to do this tomorrow in class. So make sure you kind of think about it, think about who you'd like to work with, and start to brainstorm some changes you'd like to see to New York State. Have a good night.